Welcome back to my Crash Bandicoot review series, but today we're not revisiting the old games, we have a brand new Crash game to review. We all know that, I wrote that line 2 months ago when the game came out, but you know. For the first time since 2008 we have a completely new Crash game, and man does it feel good to say that. I was nervous for this game, I won't lie, because it really needed to be a great game. I know the remakes sold well and everyone loves them, but people need to show interest in the new games too, not just the ones that they're nostalgic for, because the last thing we want is for them to just abandon the series again. Not only that though, as a Crash fan, it would be quite annoying waiting that long for a new game just for it to be crap. So yeah, leading up to this game's release, there were quite a few things I was nervous about, despite it looking really good in the trailer. But that being said, let's hop into Crash 4 and find out if it was worth the wait. If you watch my videos or follow me on Twitter, you already know the answer to that, but hey. Crash 4 is a direct sequel to the original trilogy, so it continues off from the end of Crash Warped, where Cortex, N.Tropy, and Ika-Ika were banished to the past. They've been trapped there for 22 years at this point, and they're still trying to find a way out, until Ika-Ika tears a hole in space and time, which causes him to pass out. N.Tropy and Cortex then show how much they really care for Ika-Ika by leaving him for dead and escaping on their own. Back at Insanity Island, Aku senses what just happened and tells Crash to head over to Insanity Peak to see what's going on. And just like that, we're thrown in the first level. Man, I can't tell you how good it felt starting a brand new Crash level. Before you even leave the first area, there's so many cool things to check out. You've got a Spyro floaty just off the beach, a fridge with letter magnets that spell out crunch. You've even got surfboards that have the same patterns that were on Crash's design during the Titans era. Some of this will go unnoticed by someone who isn't into the series, but these are really cool to see for Crash fans, and they reference other games plenty of times later on. Speaking about referencing other games, a bit further up in the level itself references the first game. Now let's talk about the controls though, since that's probably what you're going to be testing out at this point. They feel good. I had a bit of a problem with the slide jump during the demo that they gave me, but that was fixed for the final release. Other than that, I noticed the jumps were a bit floatier too, especially the double jumping. I quite like this though because I found it useful when correcting mistakes. You can save that second jump for whenever you need it, and it goes a long way. Because of that, you can get some serious distance while jumping. I noticed it a lot more in the bonus stages. Sometimes you'd be surprised at how far you can go. The controls feel nice here, I don't really have any complaints. There's a few things that are different, but it works well. Further on in the level, we have this rail grinding section, and look at the background during this part. It's the first time we get to see how open these levels are going to look with the backgrounds, despite it following the linear level design of the original trilogy. But even with that being the main focus, there's parts of this game that actually do open up and allow for exploring, which is nice for the people who prefer the more open Crash games. And again, even when it is just a straight path that you're going down, the background gives off a more open feel, which is nice. They also have references and other small details in the background of these levels that you might notice while playing. One of them even shows Ripperoo, who sadly isn't in this game, and what's even more sad is that they apparently had a lot more planned for him, but it didn't make it to the final version. Now, what comes with more open areas with more places to explore? That's right, more places to hide crates. And the first level hints at the hidden crate problem this game has by placing one behind this pillar. Yeah, it's not that well hidden, but it's a sign for sure. I called it a problem because that's honestly what I think it is. Sure, the original trilogy had hidden crates, but this game seems to have them in near enough every level, and they're a lot more hidden than they were in that game. Some of them are straight up ridiculous, and you can't even see them because they're off screen. Sometimes they're even on screen, but because of how well they blend in with the background, you can walk straight past them without noticing them. There were parts of the game, more than I'd like to admit, where I felt like I needed a tutorial to get the gem for smashing all the crates. Needing a tutorial here and there isn't bad, but I use them more than I'd like to, especially when it's just something simple like collecting the crates. And sometimes I wonder how people find some of the hidden stuff in this game in the first place. And of course that's only a problem if you're going for all of the crates. If you're just going through the levels casually without caring about all of that, then there's no problem here, and I'm going to speak more about that later. Now let's see, what else could I possibly talk about before moving on with the story? Oh yeah, Crash 4 includes a yellow marker underneath Crash when he jumps, which helps you know where you're going to land. When people noticed this before the game came out in the trailers and gameplay that they revealed, a lot of people seem to be against it, but I can tell you, I love it, and I'm sure a lot of people that were originally against it love it as well. It just helps you avoid so many unnecessary deaths, and you'll notice this if you play the game with it on and then you turn it off. You'll go to jump on a crate, you think you're on it? No. The big complaint about the yellow circle was that it's just too distracting, and I do agree in a way, because when I watch gameplay back, I do notice it a little bit more, and I think it just looks a bit cleaner without it there. But when you're playing the game, it's not about what looks cleaner, it's about what's going to help you not lose your fucking mind. find. And the amount of avoidable deaths I would have experienced without this thing on would have maybe been enough to drive me insane. That's the good thing though, they included an option to turn it off, so no one could complain about it being there. Anyway, when we get to the end of the first level, we get to see the new end level screen. It shows you how many of the 6 gems that you collected and what skin you unlocked or would have unlocked if you got all 6. The first 3 gems require you to collect at least 80% of the Wumpa fruit on the level, which are by far the easiest gems to get. The 4th gem is earned by smashing all of the crates. The 5th gem is earned by dying less than 3 times, and the last one is hidden somewhere in the level. I really like how they added the hidden gems. It gives you something to constantly be on the lookout for and encourages exploration. Some of them were in questionable places, definitely, but I had fun with them for the most part. If you've played the other Crash games, you probably noticed that they took inspiration from all of the different Crash games, and I think the inspiration for the hidden gems was Crash Insanity. The 3 death gem might seem tough at first, and it does become a challenge later on in the game, but if you replay the level with the sole purpose of getting through it without dying, you won't have many issues with it. So they are the 6 collectible gems that you can find in each level, but there's actually more than 6. This game features an N.Verted mode, which I'm going to talk more about later because I have mixed feelings about it. It's essentially a replay of the same level. The difference is it's mirrored and it has a filter on it. There's nothing really different about it other than the hidden gem. The hidden gem in the N.Verted version of the level is in a different place. Like I said, we're going to get into N.Verted mode later. I'm not too overwhelmingly positive about it, but one good thing I'll say about it is that it does give you an easy way of unlocking skins. You need 6 gems in total to unlock a skin, so you can do the 3 easiest gems in the normal mode, then you can switch over to N.Verted mode and get the 3 easiest in that to get the skin. And the skins are a really cool addition as well. It was nice having something to unlock and work for. They even show up in the cutscenes as well, which I appreciate very much. I think it takes a lot more effort to do that than just have the skins removed for the cutscenes, but they weren't lazy and I'm glad they weren't because now we have this. Moving on with the game though, in the second level when you arrive at Insanity Peak, you meet the first Quantum Mask, Lani-Loli. Before I talk about the Quantum Masks, I want to point out this cutscene because it's a great example of this new animated cartoon style they were going for. I believe Naughty Dog said that they were inspired by Looney Tunes and wanted Crash to look more like a cartoon than a video game, and Toys for Bob kept that in mind when making this game because the cutscenes in Crash 4 really do feel like a cartoon with the amount of expression the characters have. After you meet up with Ika-Ika again, he recognizes Lani-Loli and mentions that if the Quantum Masks have returned, then something must have gone wrong in the multiverse. The Quantum Masks are basically ancient masks that have immense power over space and time. There's 4 of them in total, and we meet them gradually throughout the game. Lani-Loli tells us we have to keep the hole shut by going through it and finding the others to help fix it before someone with a big evil plan and even bigger ego does something stupid. It then cuts to a shot of Cortex. N.Tropy is working on a rift generator which, when complete, will basically allow him to conquer all dimensions. They also linked up with N.Gin and N.Brio who are helping them out, and they both have their own little projects that they're working on, which we'll see later on in the game. N.Gin's machine is supposed to hypnotize an army, and N.Brio's potion is meant to make him unstoppable. And at first I was confused as to why N.Brio is even working with Cortex again after the events in Crash 2, but when he says his potion will make them unstoppable, at first he accidentally says it will make him unstoppable, so I took that as him maybe planning on betraying Cortex later on. You then see them walk through 2 separate quantum rifts, and the journey of hunting down the bad guys and finding the quantum masks begins. This is also the first time we get to see the hub world, which is worth talking about in itself. It's in the same style as the Crash 1 hub world, so you have to do the levels in order. And I just think this is the perfect hub world for Crash 4's theme, you know, you surf over to each new dimension that you unlock. The first dimension we get to visit is the Hazardous Waste 2084. We're here to look for Akano, and N.Gin is also here to try and stop us, but we've already been through this in previous games.
Don't worry, we have a thing where we fight, he loses. It's a well-established dynamic.
Yeah, there's quite a few jokes in this game about already beating these guys in the past. This is the first time we actually get to use Lani-Loli's ability in the gameplay itself. Each quantum mask has a unique power, and Lani-Loli's is the ability to phase objects in and out. You're going to find yourself using this to get across platforms, get through obstacles in your way, smash crates that are phased out, stuff like that. You don't get to use the quantum mask for the whole level. There's certain sections where they'll pop in and out, and the parts of the level where the quantum masks come in focus heavily on their abilities, so you get quite a bit of time with each one. This dimension features some good levels, fun road grinding sections, definitely didn't expect these guys to die in one hit, this nitro crate can go fuck itself, and there's a runaway section at the end of Hit the Road. And after that is when we meet N.Gin. He's using Akano to power his weapon of mass percussion. For the first boss fight, this is actually really good. You dodge the incoming light discs and fire back his minions. Once you've done that a couple times, you get the chance to attack. You need to use Lani-Loli Lani-Loli to reach him, and there's a time limit as well. You get plenty of time to attack though, so you won't find yourself running out of it. And I really like the Guitar Hero theme that they have going on for this one. Now Crash 4 implemented a checkpoint system into the boss fights, which I had mixed feelings about to begin with. I don't think they should have included this, to be honest. It always felt weird dying multiple times in a boss fight and respawning halfway through it. Of course it helps you feel less frustrated because you will die a lot, but they're boss fights, they're meant to be hard. In fact, I found that some of the normal levels were tougher than the boss fights. I think it would have been better as an option, like the yellow circle, or something only used in the modern mode, which I haven't even spoken about yet. In retro mode, you get a game over screen if you lose all of your lives, and in modern mode, you get an unlimited amount of lives. I think the boss battle checkpoints should have either been an option for both modes, or just limited to the modern mode. Instead, maybe they could give us a free Ika-Ika crate or something, that way we're allowed more than one hit before having to restart it. After defeating N.Gin, Akano falls into the Quantum Rift, and now we have to go through Salty Wharf 1717. This dimension features some really fun levels. It's one of my favourite themes. It's also the first dimension where we get to play as another character, Tawna. Each new playable character in this game has a different play style, so it just spices things up from the Crash gameplay. Tawna has this grapple hook that she can use to break boxes hidden in bullshit faraway places and reach new areas. When you beat the level, you actually unlock another level in the previous dimension. It's Tawna's alternate timeline version of Hit the Road. Alternate timeline levels are basically half new, half old. They start off as a new level, as a new character, and eventually phase back into the one that you played earlier with Crash. The whole point of them is to just give you another point of view from the other character's perspective. In the normal versions of the level, Crash will experience some event that, you don't really know exactly what's gone on yet, until you play the alternate timeline version where you actually get to experience how that event happened, and that's how they link back to the Crash level. These levels are cool, but it makes the Crash part feel quite repetitive. I mean, you play the original level, most likely more than once if you're 100%ing it. Then you play the N.Verted version, which is just the same level except it's mirrored and has a visual effect on it, most likely playing that one more than once as well if you're going for 100%. Then you play the alternate timeline version, which, will phase back into that same level. And then the alternate timeline version has an inverted mode as well. It can get a bit too much at times, especially on levels that you don't like or are just really hard. Since I'm going for 100% completion in this game, when I finally finish a tough level, I have 5 seconds of celebration before I realise I have to do that again, don't I? I'll admit, I'm not the biggest fan of inverted mode, and that's partially why. It gets too repetitive. I don't mind replaying a level to get full completion, but I don't want to do the whole thing again after that, and in some cases another 2 times. The level is just flipped around with a filter slapped on it, which sometimes just hurts my eyes. Why on earth would I want to complete an incredibly frustrating level all over again with a filter on it that just makes it harder for me? Some of the effects are pretty cool, like the one where you paint the world when you spin. That's probably my favourite one. But again, after the countless attempts it takes to get through some of these levels, the last thing I want to do is play them again. They just feel too similar to the original level. Some of the filters actually do affect the gameplay, usually just by speeding it up a little bit or slowing it down. First of all, this level is long as shit to begin with. I don't want to redo it again slowed down. And second of all, it's not that much of a change. It's still the same level. And they just had to choose the polar level for an alternate timeline version. This is the last level I want to do multiple times. The polar riding levels have really bad hitboxes or something, because you can go straight through 4 crates at times and you'll still miss one. It gets really frustrating. Most people seem to lose 20 to 50 lives trying to get all the crates on this, because there's no going back. When you miss one, you have to retry from your last checkpoint. While we're talking about things in this game that make you want to gouge your eyes out, let's talk about the insanely perfect relics. See, in the original Crash Bandicoot, if you wanted that box gem, you had to get all of the crates without dying. In the Insane trilogy, they changed this. You can die as many times as you want, and you can get the clear gem if you smash all the crates. In Crash 4, you can get the clear gem if you die multiple times, but now you have the addition of the insanely perfect relics, which is basically the same thing. Go through the level, collect every crate without dying. And for how bullshitly difficult these levels can be at times, this task seems near enough impossible for most of us. Think about it this way: you go through the whole polar level without dying, you have every crate, and you get to the polar section. You miss one crate and you have to do the whole thing again. I also think it's a bit weird that they decided to bring it back in this game. I mean, the Crash 4 levels are like 3 times longer than anything in the original trilogy. The box counter can go up to like 400, 500 at times. And the difficulty of the levels has also been ramped up as well. One thing I'll say about this game, it's really fun casually, but for full completion, it's a nightmare. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, after going through the Salty Wolf, we meet up with Akano in Tranquility Falls. N.Brio is also there and says we'll get a reward if we can reach him, but we have to defeat all of his horrible creations along the way. Man, this dimension is one of my favourites visually. These levels are stunning. The gameplay is solid here too. Again, this is the first time we get to use Akano, and his ability is spinning, which allows you to glide around. When we do eventually make it to N.Brio, our reward is just him trying to kill us. Didn't expect anything else. This is the second main boss fight, and it's a nice callback to that N.Brio boss fight in Crash 1. He throws potions at you, you fire back his mutants, and at the end he transforms and chases after you. Except this time you have Akano to spin him off the platform. It's a good boss fight, but because it's so similar to the Crash 1 fight, it doesn't feel completely new. After we beat him and he turns into a pterodactyl, lays an egg then flies off, we head off to Mosquito Marsh. We get to play as another character in this dimension as well, Dingodile, one of my favourite Crash characters in the series, and his levels are so fun. You can use his weapon to suck up crates, fling back TNTs, and get extra distance when jumping. He also swears.
Oh bollocks, my head hurts!
Dingodile has his own diner, which unfortunately for him gets blown up, and I feel really bad for him. I feel even worse for him after he gets sucked into the dimensional rift. For the rest of the game, he's just trying to get back home and never wanted any of this. The next level is pretty cool if you're not trying to get the Insanely Perfect relic, especially at this part. Or any part for that matter. And at the end of that level, we meet up with the third quantum mask, Capunoir. She's basically a grandma and I love it. Capunoir controls time. She can see everything. She can see the future. Just not the time she gets kidnapped by Cortex a few levels later. Or maybe she did see it and just let it happen. I would appreciate if she didn't do that, because then I wouldn't have had to go through this. Next up, we're travelling to the 11th dimension, 1954. Cortex makes his appearance, saying we'll find him up the mountain. They don't care.
How many times have you beaten this clown anyway?
3.
Really? Only 3? Funny. Seemed like more.
I would say that there's some solid levels in this dimension, but I keep saying that, and that's because every level is really good. It's only when you go for full completion when the annoying ones start to really show. You never know truly how nightmarish a level can be when you're playing casually. We also get to play as another character here, Cortex. I really like the Cortex levels. His whole playstyle revolves around shooting the enemies and turning them into platforms. One of them being a bouncy platform that's going to allow you to reach new heights. You also get a dash move which allows him to, well, dash. It takes a little while to get used to his controls, but when you do, it's a lot of fun. At the end of this dimension, it's time for a boss fight, Cortex. This is an intense boss battle. He just goes all out on you. I get the feeling he really wanted to kill Crash this time. You look at the other games and you think maybe he's going easy on Crash because secretly he likes the challenge, he likes the rivalry. In this game he wants to fucking murder you. Thankfully you do get help from Capunoir, which helps tremendously throughout this boss fight. In fact, for the first couple minutes in this boss fight, I didn't realize that you even had Capunoir to help you with this. I just kind of noticed it and thought, oh, that makes sense. But after we beat him, we have an emotional Cortex moment.
Must we keep going around and around like this? Tell me, Crash, is this all there is? Forever?
N.Tropy then butts in and says he doesn't need Cortex anymore, he's found a new partner and has a new plan. See, Cortex was alright with ruling space and time, N.Tropy wanted to wipe it out and start over, rebuilding it the way he wants to become a god. Yeah, Tropy became a bit of a nutcase.
I'd like to see him try after I shove that tuning fork up his...
But not if...
I see what you did there, Coco. Since we can't really let this happen, because that would be quite bad, and we have a common enemy, Cortex teams up with us. He's going to join us on our journey to stop N.Tropy and this new partner he found. We then move on to the Oedipus dimension, 88 million before Crash Bandicoot. One of my favourite themed worlds in the game. Cortex has a fun whole level in this one too. Unfortunately, I ended it with pain. Another highlight for me was the dinosaur chase at the end of Dino Dash. Once you escape the dinosaur, we find the final quantum mask, Ika-Ika, and it's clear from the very beginning what his ability is. Flipping the gravity. I was never good at using this in intense, fast-paced action. It's definitely the hardest ability to get used to by far. Now that we have the whole squad with us, we have to find the rift generator. So we move on to Bermugula's orbit. We land inside a spaceship and Dingodile's there too. At first they get ready to fight because they think he's still a villain, but Tawna's there behind him and says that she found him. But then something comes on the TV. It's N.Tropy and his new partner, female N.Tropy, forcing Oxide to take his ship to planet Bermugula. They tell him to watch out for anything approaching the rift generator. And there's some tension here that makes me feel very uncomfortable. Oxide feels it as well. In fact, everyone feels it. We get to use Ika-Ika's ability a lot during these levels. His ability is just trippy. You flip the gravity at certain sections and continue the normal platforming upside down. It's just a weird feeling. It doesn't take long to get used to when doing the normal platforming, but it can get confusing when you have to act fast in certain situations. There's a really cool bonus stage actually that makes use of this ability. It took me a while, but I got it eventually, and it was one of my favorites. Now, if you were glad the polar riding levels were over, think again. Oh, you just did all 4 versions of the polar level and got all the gems? Huh, you do pretty much the exact same thing in this level. He's a very cute little fella. He's like an alien version of Polar, but it's pretty much the exact same thing during the gameplay. It's a really beautiful looking level, but it's got a weird glitch in it where the music just cuts out and doesn't come back on. Kinda kills the whole mood and makes it less fun during that part. After this level, we catch up with Tropy and female Tropy, and it's time for what I thought at the time was the final boss fight. Originally, I was thinking that we were going to face Oxide before facing N.Tropy as the final boss. Strangely enough, they only have 2 health points, and I felt like this one ended a bit too soon. Before the fight, we surf through all the dimensions we've played through, and there's a funny little Easter egg you can do if you collect all the fruit. In the first part of the actual boss fight, you have to hop the platforms with help from Capunoir and Akano while the Tropys are blasting them into pieces. Then when you make it over to the space station, you have to destroy the power sources while dodging their attacks, and this part is definitely my favourite. Again, I just think it's a bit strange how they only have 2 health points. I just feel like it ends a bit abruptly. After we defeat them, the newly formed squad celebrates, and Dingodile tail whips them into another dimension. The Quantum Masks then use their combined power to plug up all the rifts and decide to take us on a trip to Neon City in the Snaxx dimension to celebrate before going home.
Nachos.
Like a little holiday, or vacation as some of you might say, except normally when you're on holiday you can relax and have fun. Yeah, this is not fun. I'm just kidding. I feel like I have to separate the game between casually and 100% completion because they are 2 completely different experiences. I'm going to get into this at the end, but again, you're playing through this casually, it's great. This dimension is fun, the levels are huge and they feel huge thanks to the backgrounds. I mean, look at this. Once we all link up again, oh god, he's thinking of something. Yeah, this is when Cortex steals Capunoir. Again, if she can really see everything, why didn't you prevent this? I wouldn't have had to do this level. I like how they're all smiling despite what just happened. When we eventually catch up with Cortex, he uses Capunoir to open a rift. He basically wants to go back to where it all started to stop Crash from ever existing. Which brings us to the last dimension, Cortex Island 1996. Oh, have I mentioned yet? The soundtrack works really well for these levels. It's not the best Crash soundtrack in my opinion, but the tracks do fit very well with the levels. Now because we're going back to the past, there's 2 versions of Cortex. The past Cortex thinks future Cortex is an imposter, and throughout the level you'll hear them argue over the megaphone.
Please, listen to me. Please, listen to me.
And oh boy, these levels are tough. Each one gets harder, and it's levels like this that make me think I'll never 106% complete this game. Realistically, I think I will eventually do it. I can work on it over time bit by bit, but it's definitely something I'll need a few days break from after countless attempts trying to beat some of these levels. Then we find past Cortex trapped in a cage while future Cortex is trying to stop Crash from being created. You can't kill past Cortex because that would stop him from existing, so instead he tries to kill Crash, but we all know how that goes. Like I said in the previous Cortex fight, it seems like he really wants Crash dead this time because he goes all out. He uses the power of every quantum mask against you while having shoot-o-matics fire lasers at you. Once you've stomped on them, a few lab assistants will spawn in and try to shoot you. To take a health point away from Cortex, you need to spin the assistants back at him. It's hard at first, but once you've died 100 times, you start to get used to it and form a strategy. I have to hand it to them though, this is truly what a final boss fight should feel like. It's more epic than all of the bosses that came before this, and it gives off that final moment feel. The last 4 health points are where it really started to get funky, I'm sure you can tell. Lasers, more lasers, falling platforms, multiple lab assistants shooting at you, this is where I died the most. If you have a bunch of lives, then I guess it's not that bad because you have checkpoints, but I lost all my lives in the level before this, so I had to keep restarting the whole thing. Which is a pretty good visualization, I guess, of the no checkpoint system that I proposed earlier. After the boss fight, future Cortex is defeated, past Cortex runs off, and we get to see the intro of Crash 1 happening, which is so cool. The Quantum Masks then send Cortex to the end of the universe, and all is well because Dingo's Diner is back, baby. Cortex doesn't seem to mind being completely alone because he finally has peace and quiet. That's pretty much how the end of the story goes. There's a 100% ending and a 106% ending too. I haven't gotten those yet though. There's also a tribute to Mel at the end of the game, who was the original voice actor for Aku, which it's a really nice thing for them to add. Once you beat the main story, you unlock the triple spin, which is a bit like the running shoes. They allow you to go faster, which you can then use to achieve the platinum relics. The game also tells you it's not over yet, there's so much more to do, and yet they're not lying. You've most likely got a bunch of gems to collect from the normal levels and inverted versions. You have the flashback tape levels to complete, which I haven't spoken about yet. Flashback levels can be accessed by finding the flashback tapes in the regular levels. The thing is though, you have to reach the flashback tape without dying. For the remainder of the level though, you don't have to worry about dying, it's just leading up to the flashback tape. If you're going for the N.Sanely perfect relic, it will just be something you collect along the way because they're not hidden. They're just placed along the path, it's just a challenge to get them because at the beginning of the game, they're placed at the very beginning of the level, but as you progress with the game, they start to appear later and later on in the levels. So chances are you missed a lot of these and you can go back and collect those. The actual flashback levels take place when Crash was first being created, and it's Cortex basically testing his abilities. These are really cool actually, I liked them more than I thought I would. If you've done all those, then you can maybe attempt the platinum relics. There's plenty more to do in this game once you've beaten the main story basically. So yeah, that was Crash 4. In my opinion, it's the best Crash Bandicoot game yet if you're playing casually. All the levels are super fun, they don't take as long if you're not collecting the crates, but they're longer than the average Crash level. You have a good story to go along with it, brilliant cutscenes that make me realise how much I want a Crash Bandicoot cartoon show. The new masks are lovable characters and have fun personalities. You get to visit so many different dimensions in the Crash universe, so there's loads of different level themes. You have more playable characters, solid boss fights, a fitting soundtrack, plenty of content, unlockable skins, and the new mask abilities that spice up the gameplay from the original trilogy. That's exactly what Crash needed for his return, something to make the platforming feel new, and these abilities definitely achieved that. Here's the thing, if you go through this game trying to collect everything on your first playthrough, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much if you just go through the game, playing the levels, collecting and exploring wherever you want, but not forcing yourself to do anything, just enjoying the levels the way you want to. You're going to have a completely different experience doing that. It's going to be a lot more fun. That's how I recommend playing the game on your first playthrough. Just go through the levels, don't worry about the crates or gems, just get what you come across and do whatever you want in the levels. Otherwise you might find yourself spending loads of time just searching every nook and cranny of the level, just to end up with 1 or 2 crates missing at the end, and I wouldn't risk losing enjoyment over that. Now for the full completion side of things, of course I'm not like saying it should be that way, it's definitely not perfect. There should be less crates hidden in ridiculous places, less repetitiveness, maybe make it so the alternate timeline levels don't phase back into levels we already played. I get the whole linking back to the Crash level thing, but instead, why not make the level itself before the event happens longer? That way we get to play a full level with a new character instead of a half level. We still get to see how the event links to the Crash level that we played before. The difference is we don't have to replay it. We just end up with a longer level with a new character, a fresh level. They could have maybe changed N.Verted mode too, so you don't need all 6 gems in them. I think 400 gems is quite a lot, and chances are not everyone is going to want to do these levels fully again. Maybe they could have made it so the levels didn't feel as repetitive, like you're just doing the same thing again, or at least gave us a different goal instead of collecting the same 6 gems. The insanely perfect relics, did they even need to be here? I'm sure some people like the challenge, and so do I on some of the levels. Even if I die at the end, I think, you know what, that's doable, and I'm gonna get this on my next couple attempts. But other times I think, you know what, this level wasn't really designed for that. Whether it's because they're too long or too difficult, you could say I'm just shit at the game, I am. But at the same time, if the insanely perfect relics weren't in this game, it would still be a very long game, and it would still be very challenging. Again, you've got the platinum relics to do, they're difficult as it is. You've got the flashback tapes to find, which require you to get to near the end of the level without dying. Just have those as the no death reward. They're more fun to collect because you don't have to get all the crates along with it. That's just a few things I think they could have done to make full completion more enjoyable. But like I mentioned, don't let that stop you from having fun with this game. For your first time playing, go through it without worrying about the crates and the gems and just completing everything, because it's the most fun Crash game when you play it like that. Of course, that is just my opinion though, so let me know down below what you thought about the game, how you think you should play it. It's not a perfect Crash game, but to be able to say the game Crash returned with is my favourite makes me quite happy. That being said, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you all in my next video.